havens. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. It is Throwdown Thursday, where we focus on themes of spiritual warfare and the real challenges that are before us, all to better understand the battles that we are in, to actively, effectively engage in fighting the good fight, to participate with the grace of God that is being lavished upon us, and to share in the victory of Christ now and for all eternity. And for our guest today, we've got Jackson Milton with us. He is the Legislative and Political Associate for Texas Right to Life. You can find out more about them at texasrighttolife.com, but you're going to hear much more here today. Jackson's also a Catholic husband and father of one, and we are very blessed to have him with us today to talk about Texas Right to Life, as well as the Texas Heartbeat Act, and so much more. Jackson, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, great. And just as a way to help people to tie this in to Throwdown Thursday within the context of spiritual warfare, well, it ought to be pretty obvious that when we're talking about the daily mass murder of the preborn, which is now has been enshrined into law, into our nation, into the United States for the past almost 50 years, and around the world as well, where we're seeing a human loss of life around the world of 200,000 every day. That's according to The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal that said that in July 2020. And we're talking about a loss of life, about a 9/11, at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S., about 3,000 children being murdered in the wombs of their mother every day. If that's not demonic, I don't know what is. And certainly we always want to reach out to those who have been wounded, to those women, those pregnant moms in need who have been exploited by abortion, the fathers, the grandparents, the siblings, anybody who's experienced the pain and suffering of abortion. We do want to point them to some healing that is available. We love you, and we want you to get that next step in the healing process wherever you may be. You can go to lovewillendchildkilling.com, click on the healing tab, and there's a lot of great resources there. But Texas Right to Life, if you go to their website, texasrighttolife.com, and you watch a video there about what they're up to with the Texas Heartbeat Act, they tie it in quite well. They say, how can you help? First, pray for Texas Right to Life and for the success of the Texas Heartbeat Act. We must don the whole armor of God in the pro-life battle. We cannot end abortion with our own puny human strength against this evil, end of quote. And so Texas Right to Life is right there in terms of viewing this within the context of the spiritual war in which we find ourselves. So we can get into that and much more with Jackson in a little bit. But first, how about just the personal story behind all of what you bring to us today, Jackson? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What is your background? How did you get involved with Texas Right to Life?
Well, I grew up in the church. I was a cradle Catholic, went to Mass every week, got baptized, my first communion, confirmed, all of that on time. I went to church retreats. I was in youth group. And so for that reason, I was always pro-life. In junior high, I used to watch videos on the ethics of abortion to really fortify my own understanding of the issue and the pro-life arguments I need to bring to our non-sectarian world. So when I got to college, I was interested in the pro-life movement and interested in being involved. I went to Texas A&M, and there was a pro-life group there called Prolife Aggies. But it took me 2 years to get involved. I was in the Corps of Cadets, which is very time consuming, and I sort of use that as an excuse to not turn my spiritual and intellectual curiosity into action. I did finally, my junior year, get involved, and once I got involved, I dived deep and fell in love with the movement and helping preborn children and pregnant mothers navigate this issue when it really truly is a spiritual issue, and one where there's a lot of pain and one where there's a lot of hurt. In that organization, I became an officer. I ended up meeting my wife, who was a president at the time. I was the secretary treasurer. So there's a running joke that she fell for her secretary while she was a president. But so I have a lot to owe the pro-life movement, even my family. While I was at Prolife Aggies, I ended up interning as a legislative associate at Texas Right to Life. I did that twice. I was able to be at the Texas Capitol during a special session of the legislature and lobby for pro-life bills. And so by the time I graduated, I ended up joining Texas Right to Life as a legislative and political associate. Now, I was a meteorology major in college, and I intended on going to work in the field of meteorology as a forecaster. But as I got involved with the movement, I realized I didn't want something in which I was intellectually curious. I wanted to be in the mission field and truly engage in spiritual warfare and fight for what is right and fight for Christ's truth here on earth. And so that brought me to Texas Right to Life. And ever since then, I've dived deeper into the issue. I went and obtained a certificate in healthcare ethics for the National Catholic Bioethics Center. And then from there, I obtained a master's in bioethics from the University of Mary. And so all my interests have really converged within the pro-life movement at Texas Right to Life. My employment, obviously, but even beyond that, my academic studies have been really in the pro-life field, specifically bioethics. But all my time is really consumed by this movement because it's that important for us as a human race, for us as God's creatures, because it truly is a genocide that our culture is enabling, that us as a human race are enabling, and we have to combat that. And I've been here since January of 2018, so coming up in January, it'll be my fourth year working here.
Outstanding. Yeah, great to have you with us, Jackson. Tell us more about Texas Right to Life. What is unique about this organization? What is it that drew you to Texas Right to Life?
So when I was in college at Texas A&M in Prolife Aggies, the student group there, Texas Right to Life was heavily involved, and many of our speakers came from Texas Right to Life, or they were referred to us by Texas Right to Life, and that's because Texas Right to Life has a footprint on college campuses. We sort of have different outreach arms within the organization. There's a legislative team of which I'm a member, and that includes a few other people, and what we do is we lobby the legislature to pass pro-life bills. So it's a lot of reading, writing, bills and legislation, reading studies, and coming up with background materials. And then finally, when session rolls around, because Texas has a part-time legislature, we try to pass pro-life bills that we believe are priorities. We also have a political arm, so we can't really do what we do in the Capitol if we don't have pro-life elected officials. So we try to elect them in the interim between sessions. And then we also have an educational arm, and we have a fellowship program where we give students $1,000 per semester to go do pro-life work on campus. And that's really where I met Texas Right to Life and how I became involved, because it's not just about being in the Capitol or electing candidates, it's about building a culture of life as well. And we were founded in 1973 as a non-sectarian organization. There was a need for a statewide pro-life organization in Texas, and so some individuals here, they were all Catholic, started Texas Right to Life in Houston, but we weren't really a Catholic or Christian organization. That changed a couple years ago, though. We started to realize there was a very fundamental spiritual dimension of this issue, and if we were going to be lasting, if we were going to make an impact that endured past ourselves as individuals and an organization, we need to be rooted in the faith, and we must be a Christian organization, not just one that employs all Christians. So we recognize this as a spiritual issue, and that's just strengthened us as an organization. Since then, we've had our best years by almost every metric since we became a Christian organization. So that really shows that when you stand up for what's right, and when you align yourself with God's will, good things are going to happen. And that's really firmed my convictions in what Texas Right to Life is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. And we're going to dive deep today into the Texas Heartbeat Act. Jackson's really going to help us to understand the story behind that, walk us through that, what's going on right now down in Texas. But first, as we just have a little bit left here in this first segment, Jackson, you're a young man, a young family, just had your first child, a daughter, I believe maybe 17 months ago or so. Share with us, what has that done to your pro-life conviction, actually seeing life in the womb, your own daughter in the womb of your wife, and then being born, and all of that? How has that convicted you all the more?
Yeah, as someone who worked in the pro-life movement, I've seen many sonogram images of many different babies. I've studied this issue in and out. I understood fetal development, and that there's a heartbeat at 21 weeks, that at 8 weeks the baby had fingernails and toenails. I understood all of that on an intellectual level. But when you first see your child for the first time via the ultrasound, nothing's been more moving to me. There's a new emotional dimension to this that I truly understand now as a father, and it's fortified my convictions that abortion's not just a tragedy but an atrocity, and I'm even more committed now to fighting it.
Praise God. And I do want to, as we head into the break here, just remind folks of that point, right? Can we all think back, anybody who is a parent, to that first child growing in the womb of the family, they're growing in the womb of the mother, and seeing that first child born, every child, right? Your sense of that life. And then understand what's going on with abortion. We've got to get convicted. We've got to break through our desensitization on this. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
My name is Nathan Wigfield, Executive Director of the St. Thomas More House of Prayer, a Catholic retreat center in Cranberry, Pennsylvania, with the mission of praying and promoting the Liturgy of the Hours. Our goal is to help people experience the Liturgy of the Hours and discover the prayer that will change their life. The Catholic Church teaches us that the Liturgy of the Hours is the prayer that Christ himself, together with his body, addresses to the Father, and that its purpose is to sanctify each day in the whole range of human activity. That means every time we pray this prayer, our relationship with Christ is deepened. We are united to the faithful of every time and place, and our entire day and work are made holy unto the Lord. To learn more about the prayer of the Church, please visit liturgyofthehours.org or call our retreat center at 814-676-1910.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Each weekday from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, the Station of the Cross brings you Mother Miriam Live.
We love you out here in Massachusetts. And I got a message for all the young mothers I know listen to you. You can do it.
God bless you, Ed. That's God's message.
Tune in from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern for Mother Miriam Live on the Station of the Cross and our free iCatholic Radio mobile app. You can also watch the video stream every day on Facebook or on YouTube.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jackson Milton. He is a legislative and political associate for Texas Right to Life, texasrighttolife.com. And Jackson, help us to understand what is going on right now with the Texas Heartbeat Act. And I guess first, before we get into what's currently happening, can you tell us a bit about how did the Texas Heartbeat Act come about? What's the story behind it? I think a lot of folks saw this happen and were sort of just surprised and blown away. It happened overnight for a lot of people, not for you guys down there at Texas Right to Life, but for a lot of people it happened overnight. And it was mind-blowing, saying how can this be that they weren't expecting it, and then for it to be sustained even throughout all the legal challenges has been amazing. But help us to understand this initial story behind where it all came from.
Yeah, I think even for the abortion industry, it happened overnight. They were a little bit lazy in some of their legal strategy, and I can explain why in a second. But yeah, unless you've been a hermit, you understand that this has happened in Texas, that the significant pro-life law is in effect and it's saving lives, and that truly is God's miracle. It started earlier this year. So we came into session with the priority of stopping abortion, of passing a law that bans abortions, because unfortunately in 2019, Texas was unable to do so, and there are various reasons for that. So that was really the top priority for us, and it should be for the entire legislature. We had meetings with a lot of elected officials, and they were really sold on Heartbeat as an idea, and that was one of the bills we were prioritizing coming into session. And so we started sitting down with pro-life lawyers and elected officials and brainstorming, how can we craft a law that's going to withstand legal challenges? Because historically, we've elected pro-life elected officials, not just in Texas, but throughout the United States in different state legislatures. They've passed pro-life laws, and then the abortion industry runs to the courts, who are all too eager and excited to strike down those pro-life laws to enjoin its enforcement and ensure that no lives are saved, even though people are electing pro-life senators and representatives. So we wanted to stop that. At least a dozen states have passed Heartbeat before we were able to, and all of the enforcement of all of those laws were enjoined. So even though they passed this great pro-life law, in practice, it didn't do anything, and we didn't want that to be the case in Texas. So we started thinking, well, the problem is what's occurring with these other Heartbeat laws and with other pro-life laws like the dismemberment bans or 20-week bans is that the abortion industry is suing government officials who were charged with enforcing the law. That it's the Attorney General, medical boards, Health and Human Services commissions, your local district attorneys. These are people who are typically charged with enforcing criminal or administrative penalties against a bill, and these are state officials. So it's very clear to the abortion industry, they can sue these officials before the law goes into effect to stop the enforcement of the law, so it never actually saves any lives. So we thought, well, let's not give these officials that enforcement power, because then the abortion industry is going to sue them. What if we give that enforcement power to everyday private citizens who are unknown, who are unascertained, because we don't know which citizens are going to actually bring a lawsuit? What if we give them the power to sue the abortion industry? And that's the only way we can enforce the law. So that's the language we came up with the intention that if we pass this law, the abortion industry will not know who to sue. And they can't just sue random people, and I can explain some of the legal reasoning here in a second, but that was the idea, is it makes it difficult for them to sue. And so that was ultimately the bill that went into effect, was a Heartbeat ban, a Heartbeat bill that bans abortions on preborn children with detectable heartbeats, with only that civil enforcement, where the state will not be able to enforce the law. That's the law Governor Abbott signed in May. And then the abortion industry tried to sue at the last minute. It ended up not working, and the law went into effect at September. And besides a period of about 2 days, it's been in effect until now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we've had the Biden administration and the current Justice Department. So they've been trying to do everything they can to try to stop it, but to this point, they've been unsuccessful. But they're still trying to figure out ways. And again, so-called Catholic Joe Biden calls himself a faithful or a devout Catholic. Again, I would call him a fake Catholic or an anti-Catholic Catholic. He is off on a key point here that is, yes, it is part of the doctrine of the Catholic Church, crystal clear, but it's also a tenet of natural law, natural reason. Life is sacred, right? From conception, fertilization, onward, and Joe Biden, as I think Texas Right to Life recently stated, the most pro-abortion president we've ever had. When you see how he's trying to attack this law, what do you have to say about what's been going on with the Biden administration and this law?
Yeah, so one of Biden's top priorities is to codify Roe versus Wade. And what that will do in practice is it means abortion will be legal throughout pregnancy, up until birth, up until the child's maybe halfway born, in every single country or every single state throughout the United States. I don't think any Democratic presidential candidate, any Democrat who's been president has proposed such a radical idea. But that is what Joe Biden, who professes to be a Catholic, is prioritizing. And the effect would be there'd be more dead babies, there'd be a much more powerful abortion industry because of a Catholic, quote unquote, Catholic president. That would be a disaster. And so part of that too is trying to fight for every single pro-abortion measure he possibly can, including by suing Texas because of the Texas Heartbeat Act. I think it's very unfortunate. I know he recently had a meeting with Pope Francis, who's been very clear and articulate on this issue that we have to stop abortion. And this isn't a matter of private ordering and private judgment. It's a matter of saving babies and stopping abortions, even other people from committing and obtaining abortions. I hope they had that conversation. Unfortunately, I'm doubtful it would have much of an effect on Biden, because if it did, he would have stopped this lawsuit already. But it's really unfortunate, and it makes the Catholic Church look bad. He's engendering grave scandal amongst many Catholics who now think it's acceptable to hold pro-abortion beliefs as Catholics, even Catholics who may be attending Mass every week and obtaining the sacraments. It's really unfortunate. I'm praying for his conversion every day. Certainly, it would make a huge impact if he turned around and said, I'm pro-life now, we need to stop abortion. But it's just a cynical political ploy at this point. He's playing politics. He wants to be president, and that's clearly what's most important to him.
Mm-hmm. Right. And any level-headed, faithful Catholic can see that we really need our bishops to enforce Canon 915. If Canon 915 is to apply in any case, well, then it must apply in this case when you have a pro-abortion president calling himself Catholic, obstinately persevering in this grave sin of pushing taxpayer-funded abortion on demand. I mean, he's all in. And when we have that, Canon 915 must be applied, because the bishops must make it clear this is not Catholic. We don't want to scandalize people and them move away from the Catholic Church because they think, well, this is not of Jesus, or the way that Joe Biden is acting here about abortion. If this is what Catholicism is, I want no part of it. So the bishops have to make it clear that he is perverting the faith. He is not following it. And they can do that not just in word, they must also do it in action, enforcing canon law as it is on the books. Again, Canon 915, themensmarch.com. I want to encourage people to check that out, and all men to join us for themensmarch.com, taking place November 15th in Baltimore on the first day of that USCCB Fall Assembly. We're going to be marching from a abortion center, killing center, about 1.5 miles from where the bishops are meeting, and then we're going to land at our rally point from there outside of the hotel where the bishops are meeting, not as an adversarial way, but truly in the context of spiritual warfare, to say, look, we're on your side. We're trying to encourage you to do the right thing. Don't continue on the wrong path here. Let's make it clear, out of love for Joe Biden, out of love for all, that this is not Catholic teaching. This is wrong. He is not in communion, and he must be told that he ought to not present himself for Holy Communion, and if he does, it ought to be withheld from him, just as Canon 915 says. So all of that going on in the background of all of this with the Texas Heartbeat act. What else? I mean, there's so much that is so crazy from the media, the secular media surrounding all of this, the pro-abortion mainstream media. Obviously, they're not going to be unbiased in their reporting about this. What have you seen? What has been maybe the biggest lie or some of the biggest lies that are being reported that you would like to set straight?
I think they like to cover a lot of the scientific truth behind abortion with euphemisms. This refusal to call a heartbeat is just weird. They use language like fetal pole cardiac activity, the pumping of cells that may become a heart, and just stuff like that. It's just that's dishonest and misleading and mischaracterizing, because they know if they speak in scientific fact, if they speak in language that reveals what abortion actually is, people will be pro-life. And unfortunately, I think this abortion debate it's really hurt a lot of people. It's caused a lot of pain, and something that terrible, something that evil will cause a lot of pain. Here at Text Threat to Life, we've seen a lot of that. We've gotten terrible phone calls. We've gotten terrible voice messages telling us to go die, telling us that they're sending Satan after us, stuff like that. We even had a bomb threat. I was driving into work one morning, and I was told, don't come in. And other people were told, don't come in. We received a bomb threat and someone telling us that we were going to die that day. And we actually got a mysterious package right at the same time we got that voicemail that wasn't postmarked. We had no idea where it came from. It looked very suspicious. And it turned out just to be a coat hanger, so not really creative. They probably could have done better if they were actually trying. The bomb ended up not being real. But I think a lot of the media rhetoric drives some of this, unfortunately. If we spoke the truth about abortion and what it does, and that it's the intentional killing of an innocent preborn child, many more people would be pro-life. But if we talk about, if we keep using dehumanizing language and pejorative language like fetus, if we keep refusing to acknowledge a heartbeat, that's going to ensure that this debate, this cultural divide, ensues. And that's what the abortion industry and the media want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and tell us a little bit more. Well, first, even before I ask this question, I do want to make clear for people, just in case somebody's watching and it's their first time, maybe they saw the topic, they clicked on this later as this is out into the online ether, and they just see the topic, they say, that's interesting, they click on it, and then they're learning about this. It's a scientific fact that human life begins at conception, fertilization. Consult any human embryology textbook. It's going to show that, right? That there's a new, unique human being that begins at fertilization, at conception, fertilization, not implantation, but fertilization, a unique human being with a unique DNA separate from the mother and the father. All that is needed is time and nutrition, and that child normally will, unless something impedes it, will grow throughout every stage of life in the womb, as we all did, so on and so forth. And so then it becomes a philosophical question of does every innocent human being have a right to life? We should all say yes to that very, very quickly. This is how human rights atrocities take place, barbaric atrocities take place, when we say no to that question, that not all innocent human beings are worthy of life unworthy of life, as the Nazis used to say. We're in a barbaric time right now. Thousands of preborn children being murdered every day. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
I'm a widower, parent of 3 almost adults, and listen to you guys around the clock. Father McTigg, Society of Jesus, he's wonderful. Mother Miriam, of course, the Divine Office, and many other great things that Station of the Cross does. So thanks very much for your great work.
I had a friend at work email me and tell me about the Station of the Cross a couple months after it started, and I was so excited. I tuned into it, and I found that I love the Catholic station.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. Rabbi Yehuda Levin, speaking for more than 1,000 rabbis, has praised the Church's message that we have a moral responsibility to vote for public officials who defend the right to life. Rabbi Levin said, quote, "This moral teaching of the Catholic Church is clearly found in the Torah and serves to give solid guidance to voters, whether they are Christian, Jew, or any man of faith." This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
They did everything right, asked if I needed anything, got right to the point, and talked to me about many different options. They are extremely helpful. These were the words from a Coalition for Life client. You too can be a part of this life-saving effort. Human life is sacred. Think about it. coalitionforlife.com.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jackson Milton. He is a legislative and political associate for Texas Right to Life, texasrighttolife.com, and he's helping us to understand the Texas Heartbeat Act, what is going on there. He's already given us so much in terms of the story behind it and what's been taking place. I encourage you, if you're just tuning in right now, to make sure you go back and hear the entirety of this to get caught up to this point. But at this point, Jackson, first I want to make this point again for anybody who's maybe just tuning into this, that the pregnant mom who is abortion minded, that we see that human being, that pregnant mom who is abortion minded, we see her right to life. We love her with the same love that we love that child in the womb. It's another lie of these pro-abortion folks that want to stir people up to think that pro-lifers are somehow for the baby and not for the mom. They want to pit us against each other. That's what they're trying to do. That's not the pro-life position at all. It's not the Catholic position or any Christian that I know of, the position that they would take. We love the mom, especially a pregnant mom in need. She is a vulnerable human being that deserves even more love extended her way, and not just in word, but in deed. I know if you go to Texas Right to Life, if you're down there in Texas and you're a pregnant mom in need, they have resources right on their website, texasrighttolife.com, that are going to help you, point you in the right direction of how you can find some help if you are pregnant and in need. But that's really the tact that society ought to be taking, that government ought to be taking, that churches ought to be taking, is by coming alongside these pregnant moms in need, not exploiting them for profit and killing their children and sending them on their way, not at all, but coming alongside them if they are pregnant and in need, and helping them to address the real problems in their life, of which that child in the womb, that child, him or her, they are not the problem, right? They are a person to be loved, not a problem to be destroyed. There are other problems, though, that do need to be addressed, and there is need for help in these areas, and that's where society ought to step in, especially, again, churches and government. That's where they can play a really great role. Jackson, anything else that you want to speak to that point?
Yeah, this is a point made by a Catholic bioethicist named Carter Sneed at Notre Dame, but our laws, the anthropology underpinning our laws on abortion, view that situation as a battle of two strangers who are engaged in a battle of wills. We have a child, a preborn child, a fetus, versus a mother, and they have interests against each other, and that the state's going to side with the woman. The truth is, this is a biological relationship between a parent and child. And when we view it as such, as they're in this kinship with each other, a parent and a child, a mother and a child, that we have obligations to both of them, not just the preborn child, but also the pregnant mother as well. So the pro-life movement has been very great because we recognize that obligation. And there are pregnancy resource centers all across the country, vastly outnumbering abortion facilities, who are ready and eager to help pregnant mothers who may be in a very difficult situation, who may not have anyone else there to help them navigate this unexpected pregnancy. And so as a movement, we need to support these pregnancy resource centers, and in so doing, support pregnant mothers.
Absolutely. And again, some of what you're hearing, this overheated rhetoric from the mainstream pro-abortion media, they'll say that they'll be talking about the unprecedented enforcement strategy of the Texas Heartbeat Act, and they'll be using things like vigilante or bounty hunters, help people to understand what's really going on here, how it's really the abortion providers that are breaking the law who are the criminals under this law, and also help us to understand what is out there in terms of ProlifeWhistleblower.com and what reporting actually looks like for somebody to make use of this law.
Mm-hmm. So the media and the abortion industry use some of this rhetoric because it makes us look like Batman, that we're going out and defying the law and doing our own thing irrespective of what our legal rights are, what our legal obligations are. But you're right, that's not true. The law, in this case, actually bans abortion, and the law actually prescribes this process for citizens to follow. So they're not vigilantes, they're not bounty hunters, they're actually following the law itself as outlined in that process. So we've been clear from the beginning that we want to ensure that the law is followed. We want to enforce the law. And we set up this website to help us do so in the beginning, called ProlifeWhistleBlower.com. And it was a website where individuals throughout Texas and throughout the United States can go and submit information if they had evidence that an abortion facility was breaking the law. And that would help us enforce the law, that would help them enforce the law, because we were able to gather information together as a community. Well, it did not take long for the abortion industry to discover that we had created this website to keep the abortion industry accountable. And so they started flooding that website with fake reports, with fake evidence, with a lot of obscene information. And their idea was to keep us busy, that we never actually get to the real of the abortion industry breaking the law. Now, that actually made the website very difficult to operate. And then later on, they went to GoDaddy, who was hosting the website, and basically told GoDaddy, you can't allow this to happen. And GoDaddy succumbed to that pressure, said we were violating their terms of service, and it basically ended up canceling us. So we were kicked off GoDaddy and Prolife Whistleblower, not TexasRightToLife.com. And then the website's not come back online. But even though the website's not come back online, the abortion industry is still complying with the law. So we know that the law is saving lives. We are approximating between 50 and 100 per day. It's impossible to know exactly how many, because we do know that some pregnant mothers are obtaining abortions earlier in their pregnancy than they otherwise would under the counterfactual, where there is no Texas Heartbeat Act. We know some women are going to other states like Colorado or New Mexico to obtain abortions if they have the financial wherewithal. So we know it's not saving the 85% estimate of the abortions that it actually bans, but we do know it's making a significant impact, because we do see that at the abortion facilities. We do see that at the pregnancy resource centers. So ProliveWhistleblower.com is not online right now, but it might be in the future. But the miracle really is that the law is saving lives, and that the abortion industry is following the law, which is what we want. We want them to follow the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if there was clear evidence, if somebody did have some evidence on the ground of an illegal abortion taking place, what does that look like in terms of reporting? So they don't have the resource ProlifeWhistleBlower.com. What do? Do they just call 911, or is there a specific way that they go ahead and file a report? What does that look like?
Yes, they can file a lawsuit in their local jurisdiction, and just make sure they have the information themselves, that they gather information and provide evidence, and then there'll be a fact-finding process. They could still reach out to us and contact us with that information and stuff like that. But they're able to file the lawsuit themselves. Prolife Whistleblower was our invention. It was not a formal part of the law. So the idea is that any citizen can file a lawsuit. They don't have to work with us. They're able to do so on their own.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's going to be a messy time if and when, by God's grace, Roe v. Wade is not only overturned, but hopefully there is really a law that enshrines the personhood of the child in the womb. And if that were to take place, it's going to be a messy time in the culture, just as it was after slavery was outlawed. It was messy in the culture for quite a while after that. There's a great article on this, actually, that came out from the CatholicThing.com. If you go to the CatholicThing.com, I think you can find it there. I'll see if I can find it during the break and let you know the name of that article. But it's really good the way that it runs through and kind of understands how it's analogous back to that time. Again, slavery shows us the way, the trajectory when you have a human rights atrocity, the trajectory that it needs to go for it to become unthinkable. Right? We had slavery. It was legal. It was baked in to the culture, to the economic engine of the nation. Nobody at the time would have thought, how could this ever become unthinkable? And yet now it is, right? And there were abolitionists fighting for it that had to go through a whole lot of difficult things at the time, and they fought the good fight. And so we are in that time now with respect to this human rights atrocity. And what's the trajectory? First, it has to become illegal, and then after that, everything shaking out, all the difficulty after something has become illegal, then it can become unthinkable. And this same trajectory can take place with respect to this daily mass murder of the preborn. And so, I think a lot of people have had their eye on the Dobbs case, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, the Supreme case coming out of Mississippi. Oral arguments expected to be heard December 1st. Final decision probably sometime spring, summer 2022, as the one that is going to allow the courts to revisit Roe and Doe. But now, am I hearing correctly that this Texas Heartbeat Act is now being looked at as potentially kind of being rolled into that? What have you been hearing? What's your sense of things?
I don't have any inside information, but I have heard that as well. That's a distinct possibility that some of the justices would be inclined to do such a thing, that they'd want to almost consolidate these cases with Dobbs, because they are substantively similar in that they ban abortions before viability, which doesn't conform with the requirements of Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So that's a distinct possibility, and it would be interesting to see what would happen if that was to be the case. But the most important point there that you have made is that Roe falling is a very distinct possibility. That the state of Mississippi and Dobbs is asking the Supreme Court to reverse Roe versus Wade. That the way they should uphold Mississippi's laws constitutional is to torpedo Roe and Casey into the center of the earth for us to never see again. That's what Mississippi is asking, and the Supreme Court could apply. And I actually think it's the most logically coherent possibility. I think the compromise decision actually doesn't make much sense, even though it may be strategically what the Supreme Court's trying to do. But next summer, when that decision comes down, it could be a monumental moment for the pro-life movement. Whether Heartbeat's a part of that or not, I don't know. But even if it's not, Dobbs is the most significant thing that's happening for the pro-life movement across the country right now. Heartbeat is obviously a really big deal, especially here in Texas, but Dobbs is equally important on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and y'all down in Texas have shown a blueprint of what other states can do, and many states are now working up similar legislation in their state legislators, so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. That article from the Catholic Thing, it's the CatholicThing.org. It's an article that was published just a few days ago. It's entitled Cry Havoc, Threats to Right to Life Groups. It actually talks about Texas Right to Life and your recent banquet and the different threats that you guys have been undergoing and different threats to pro-lifers as potentially Roe v. Wade will be revisited. And it says here, this is just a portion of the article for people to keep in mind, to take to heart. It says this: in the 1850s, plenty of genteel folk preferred that slavery not be talked about in public company. So too now there are many, even among Catholic priests and bishops who would prefer we just not talk about our current peculiar institution, abortion. I mean, it's so unnecessarily embarrassing, such a distraction, so likely to provoke anger from the sophisticated elite. Best, therefore, to keep it under wraps and avoid looking the evil squarely in the face, such as men in chains or babies in trash cans. End of quote. It's a great article. Highly recommended, thecatholicthing.org. When we come back, maybe we can pick it up in our final segment right there and ask about what has been the support from the Catholic bishops in Texas. I'm interested to know. I sincerely don't know what their support or lack of support has been when it comes to the Texas Heartbeat Act or other things that are being worked on down there. How have the bishops been involved? I think Bishop Strickland, he's always been a good one in support of life. I would expect him down in the Diocese of Tyler to be supportive, but I'm not sure of the others. We're going to ask Jackson when we get back, but we have to refuse to be silent, refuse to be inactive. We've got to face the reality, break through our desensitization to the daily mass murder of the preborn, help others to do the same. Love enough to do more. We'll be right back.
Baptism, it is the foundation of the Christian life. We become therefore members of the church at baptism. Baptism gives us strength and the right to be Christians and to act as Christians and to take part in Christian worship, the height of which is the Eucharistic celebration.
Sermons for Everyday Living, weekdays from 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross.
Praise be to Jesus. Hi, this is Joe McLean, host of the Catholic Drive Time Morning Show, joining you on the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network each weekday morning at 7 a.m. We'll keep you informed and inspired with insightful guests and breaking news stories of the day. That's the Catholic Drive Time, weekday morning, 7 a.m. on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic radio app. We'll see you then. May God love you.
There was no single event. It was more gradual. Eventually you just don't go one Sunday and then you don't go 2 Sundays in a row. Then went through a divorce and ended up being a single parent. If I didn't have church or God, I would be back at that lonely stage, that trouble stage. Whenever you get anxious and worry about things, you just know that Jesus has it under control.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
To the Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Jackson Milton, Legislative and Political Associate for Texas Right to Life, TexasRightToLife.com, and he is helping us to understand more about the Texas Heartbeat Act. We've been talking about it throughout the show today. And Jackson, I am sincerely wondering, what are the Catholic bishops like down there in Texas? Are they being supportive, I guess, either individually or collectively as a conference of bishops in Texas? And even the USCCB, I guess I have not heard either way, whether they've been supportive and in their communications and making public statements on this in support of the Texas Heartbeat Act or not. So what is your assessment for us? How have the U.S. Catholic bishops been on this?
So the bishops in Texas, the way they engage the legislature is through their bishops' conference, the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, the TCCB. The TCCB did testify for the Texas Heartbeat Act during the legislative session, so they were supportive. They weren't too active in the process, as far as I'm aware, as far as I saw, although they were supportive in testimony. But our relationship with the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops is definitely a complicated one, particularly because their position on what we call the 10-day rule here in Texas, which enables hospitals to remove life-sustaining treatment from patients against their stated wishes, but just given 10 days notice. The Texas Catholic Conference is supportive of that law, and we're opposed and seeking to repeal that law. So that's really where some contention comes into play. On abortion in particular, they were supportive of the Texas Heartbeat Act, but it's really on the medical ethics side of things where we have where we sort of butt heads. And it's really with the conference, not necessarily with individual bishops, because we don't necessarily know where every single individual bishop stands. And I agree with you that Bishop Strickland and Tyler is great. He's been a great advocate for the Catholic faith and actually living out our faith in our actions, including in our political actions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, he's agreed to be with us at the Men's March. He's going to be leading us in the first decade of the Rosary on that day, again, November 15th in Baltimore, themensmarch.com. Jackson, what else would you like to share with us today? What else is important for us to know here?
Yeah, so as I talked about, the 10-day rule is another fight we have here in Texas that's unique to Texas. Unfortunately, we've not had the cooperation of the bishops. I don't know why. I don't understand it. It's really unfortunate that the Texas Catholic Conference is opposing us on that issue, and because we need to be pro-life from fertilization until natural death, and we're having hospital ethics committees and physicians and sometimes faceless boards deciding whether a patient's going to live or die when the patient has clearly indicated that he or she wants to live and that he or she wants treatment that is working, that the hospital wants to remove precisely because it is working. So that's another issue on which we're constantly working, and it's always been a priority for us. The Sanctuary City for the Unborn movement came from Texas. It's now spreading to other states. That actually predated the Texas Heartbeat Act as an idea. And so we have cities around Texas who are banning abortion within their city limits and stopping the abortion industry from setting up shop. So that's another great thing that's occurring here in Texas. And then we also have elections coming up, and that's across the country. And there's a fervent need to elect pro-life candidates who want to vote based on their convictions while in office and who won't buckle to pressure, even if it might be politically inconvenient to be pro-life. So that's going to be a priority for us moving forward. And lastly, continuing to support students on campus via our fellowship program. I was not a fellow, my wife was, but that's how I got connected with Texas Right to Life. And that's a great way to build a culture of life. As you talked about earlier, this is a legal battle, this is a spiritual battle, and this is also a cultural battle. And culture wars are fought primarily and first and foremost on college campuses. And so we need pro-life students who are there and who are actually getting paid to do pro-life work, because we know the other side has a lot more money than us. And they're
Yeah, I think we lost Jackson there, unfortunately. We'll see if we can get him back. We only have a few minutes to go in the show, but I guess it's a good reminder to lay this quote back out right now, which is often attributed to St. Joan of Arc, that all battles are first won or lost in the mind. And that's true, right? We've got to get our minds right around reality of when is there a human being and when is there not, right? And we know, again, scientifically, it is from conception, fertilization onward. And so at any time in that human being's life, they are a person. To say that there's a human being that is alive and somehow not a human person, that's just creating a false category by which you can then claim that some human beings are not human persons, and therefore we can then do what we want with them. Again, this is something that was done with respect to slavery, and it's something that is being done now with respect to abortion. Every human being is a human person, right? And so every human being is a human person. They have a right to life. They have a right to justice. justice in terms of giving them what they are owed. And the fundamental right that is owed is not to kill them, not to murder an innocent human being, an innocent human person. And so it's very, very simple, right? The name of this show, This Simple Truth. This truth here is incredibly, incredibly simple. A small child can obviously grasp this, and yet many who are very intellectual somehow do not grasp it. And so, again, we just have to stand up for what is true on this. And it ought not be that difficult for us when we remember that if we are following our Lord Jesus, right, that he said, come and follow me, pick up your cross each day and follow me, and that whatever you do to the least of these, you do it unto me. And so let us love our Lord. Let us love him in every single human being, every single person we encounter, including our smallest, most vulnerable brothers and sisters. It's great to see the good work that Texas Right to Life is doing. Again, I want to point you to their website, texasrighttolife.com. Check out all of their good work. It's amazing what they've done with respect to this Texas Heartbeat Act. They've figured out a way to really end abortion in Texas effectively. And now, there's still games being played and there's still legal maneuvering to be done. Again, they've got the whole U.S. justice system against them, and the president, the executive branch, Joe Biden, trying to figure out ways to stop them. So pray for that Texas Heartbeat Act, for Texas Right to Life, for all of their good work, for Jackson Milton, as well as their executive director, Jim Graham, and his family, and pray for all those who are doing the good work in the trenches, day in and day out, in their local communities, in their counties, in their states. This must be done. And so for those that are doing it, well done. Keep going. We need you. It is extremely valuable for all of us. Let us understand that we've been given an opportunity. We were not snuffed out in the wombs of our mothers, right? We've been given an opportunity here. Let us make the most of it. Let us stand up for those who are being snuffed out. We have to understand this is not something that happened some years ago. This is something that is ongoing. It's happening every day. There are new children being murdered today. There will be new children being murdered tomorrow, ongoing, right? If we can do something to help save a life, to help save some of these lives, to help these pregnant moms in need, let us do it. Let's dive into the pro-life work that is before us. So once again, I just want to encourage us all, by God's grace, to love enough to do more. And thank you to Jackson Milton, Legislative and Political Associate for Texas Right to Life, for coming on with us today. And again, Texas Right to Life for all of their good work. More information, you can go to texasrighttolife.com. If there's anything you want to send me a comment or question on, feel free to do so by going to jimh@thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.
What do the